Apart from your own ability to deliver as a software engineer, the next most important factor which contributes to your success is going to be your manager. Now, we can't control who our manager is or how competent they are once they're already our manager, but we definitely have the opportunity to choose one which will maximize our chances for success. Over my many years and managers at Meta, I've compiled a list of the traits and characteristics which make a great manager and what you should look for when choosing one. It's important to note, however, that what makes a manager a good manager can actually be quite subjective and everyone's needs will be different. For this reason, I've streamlined the list to be only those things that can quite easily generalize and are not that specific to what I personally like. Before we get into it, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and to leave a comment for the YouTube algorithm. The first and probably most important trait is nothing to do with behavior, but rather with experience. Ideally, your manager would be one with a long tenure. The reason for this is simple. You want them to know what they're doing, how to play the game, that they have friends and connections in the company that make it easier to set the team up for successful collaborations and partnerships. The same way you probably wouldn't want your surgeon to be a med student who just graduated, you also wouldn't want your manager to be one that just made the switch from being an IC. It takes time to learn the skills of being a successful manager, to learn your own personal management style, and to experience managing many different people so they can have a nuanced approach to you instead of just applying the same cookie cutter style. Managers need to pick up the nuances of the management culture at your particular company and to learn the ins and outs of the quote unquote game. How can they best protect their reports? How can they best make the case for promotion? How to argue that someone doesn't deserve a bad rating? All of these things take time in the game and require a manager to go through a good few cycles before they have it down. Otherwise, you run the risk of a manager who is so focused on their own survival in their role and they don't actually have the mental bandwidth to be able to juggle the needs of all their reports. So, if you can, choose a manager who is not a newbie. All right, next on the list is the manager who converted from an engineer. So, this is the next best trait to have because the main reason for this is if they were previously an IC, then they've been around the block. They know how the company culture works, what it means to be successful, and how to be successful. Most importantly, they'll have a strong understanding of the company's tools and parts of the codebase, allowing them to be more informed and viable technical partner when you're stuck. Even if they're not in the trenches writing code with you, they can at least understand the problems you're working on and give advice to you or refer you to connections that they have at the company. When you have managers join from another company, what ends up happening is they ultimately bring the culture and accepted management style from the formal company with them. There's nothing worse than an Amazon manager rocking up and trying to do things the Amazon way. At a place like Meta, that approach is so orthogonal to how the company does things that it causes conflicts and tensions, not just with their reports, but with other managers. Having someone who rose through the ranks internally and knows how the company operates is ideal. Remember that if an IC converts to a manager, then in most cases, they are at least an IC6, which means that they have many, many years of experience to draw from, and the more experience, the better. Everything is just so much easier when you have a manager who understands how the game is played, what flies and what doesn't, what things to do and what things to avoid. This context is a muscle that's built over years and years of experience, and you just can't replicate this quickly if you're coming externally. So, if you can, choose a manager who is a former IC at your current company that then converted to be a manager. One of the most important characteristics on an interpersonal level for a manager to have is their ability to be open and transparent. There's a lot of moving parts in a large FANG style corporation. A lot of this machinery is really above the heads of most ICs, and because of this, it's actually hard to know what's going on above us. For this reason, sometimes when things change, it can seem like a massive paradigm shift, but realistically, most ICs are just out of the loop, and thus it comes as a surprise. A good manager will be able to keep the team informed about what's going on outside of their normal field of view. Oftentimes, managers can warn a team about upcoming reorgs or shifts in priorities well before they are officially announced. This is great because it allows you to shift gears sooner and prioritize work accordingly. But manager transparency doesn't just stop at explaining things that are happening behind the scenes. Sometimes you need a manager to be straight with you and the team about things that hit closer to home. Are partner teams complaining about your collaboration? Are you not fulfilling your responsibilities at the expectations for your level? Are you deluding yourself that you deserve a promotion or a high rating this performance cycle? There comes a time when a manager just needs to give it to you straight and let you know exactly where you stand. The last thing you want to do is be surprised when it's already too late to make any adjustment. Having a manager that is straightforward with you and doesn't shy away for the tough conversations is a blessing. It isn't always easy to be told bluntly that the work you did was not good enough or that you dropped the ball on a partnership. But it's this feedback that forces you to grow as an engineer and course correct. Without it, you're flying blind, and when it eventually comes to the light, it will only be so much worse. We want our managers to be open with us about the good and the bad. The more you are kept in the loop, the better. Oftentimes, they'll tell you things that maybe you shouldn't know yet, or give you the scoop that only managers are supposed to know. A manager who is willing to do this is one that you know that you can trust and that has your best interests in mind. They put the team and its health first, and they deeply care for each member. And that when they tell you something, you can take that to the bank because you know that they're not trying to pull the wool over your eyes. The earlier you can determine whether a manager is open and transparent, the better. If from the first introductory one on one you have with them, they are open and honest with you, no matter what you ask, then you know you found a winner. Joining a new company is a scary endeavor in and of itself, and then to have to join a team of strangers and assimilate into their team culture is yet another hurdle. The onboarding process at any big company will be long and potentially complicated. There's so many moving parts and things to learn that it can be a really overwhelming and scary process at first. And then to add on top of that, that you need to start performing and delivering results. For this reason, if you have the ability to choose your own team, then one of the things you should ask every manager is where they see you potentially slotting into that team and what work streams you can be involved in. A good manager will understand your prior experience, your skill set, and your interests to come up with the most relevant and interesting projects for you. They'll take the time to understand you and what you're good at and give you a good idea of where they feel that you'd be the most successful. Especially good is if a manager can line up projects which have the potential to grow in scope and get you promoted to the next level. This shows the manager is invested in your success on the team and also wants you to come and have an opportunity to do your best work. Managers to avoid are the ones that don't really have a plan, they don't take the time to get to know you, and realistically, they're just looking for another butt in the chair to fill the headcount. Whether it's you, someone else, who cares, doesn't matter. It's all the same to them, and these are definitely the managers to steer clear of. It's safe to say that most of us probably want to be promoted at some point in our career. Unless you're already a super senior engineer, then you're probably targeting a bump to the next level. Whether it's for financial reasons, a bigger challenge, or because there's some up or out policy, promotions are a big part of a SWE's career progression. But there's usually so many moving pieces involved in a promotion and so many things that have to align that you want a manager who knows what they're doing to have your back. Having a manager that is very familiar with the promotion process for your current level and has guided others through this is essential. They'll be able to know where you are in terms of the expectations and whether enough you have enough in your promotion packet to be able to convince the committee that will ultimately decide whether you merit the promotion or not. If it's their first time going through this process, then they probably won't know all the nuances and silent expectations for putting you up for promotion. The last thing you want is to have to wait another 6 months to try again because your manager was not calibrated enough to understand how it all works and where the gaps are with respect to the bar. The more people a manager has guided through the process, the better. They'll have first-hand experience of what sorts of pushback upper management have and what sorts of signals engineers need to display in order to demonstrate competence at the next level. Without all of this context, they'll be going in blind, and that could cost you an extra 6 to 12 months of trying to plug the gaps before you can earn your promotion. When debating which team to join, ask the manager how many people they have guided to the promotion at your current level. If it's many, then you're in good hands. If it's zero, well, just keep that in mind because it can be a negative when it comes down to it. As touched on earlier in my point about being open and transparent, there just comes a time when you need to have a straight conversation with your manager and get straight answers. Am I doing well enough? Am I on track for promotion? Am I going to get a bad rating and be put on a PIP? You need a manager who can just look you in the eyes and tell you the truth to no matter what you ask them, despite how uncomfortable it might be. If there's an upcoming layoff planned and the team is asking whether we're potentially at risk, then you want a manager who can just truthfully tell you yes or no. The less you feel that you can trust your manager to tell you the truth, the more problematic the relationship becomes. Your manager is there to support you as an engineer, And if they're constantly sugarcoating things or not giving you the whole picture, it's usually hard to know how to properly proceed because they don't have all the requisite information in order to make an informed decision. Usually, a manager is the glue that holds the team together, and the less engineers feel that they can trust a manager, the worse the team culture would be. If a manager says one thing but does another, then people start losing faith in what the manager says or is trying to sell them. People start talking behind each other's backs and discussing things amongst themselves instead of in an open format as a team. People can start to be a little bit paranoid and trying to overanalyze situations because the manager's messaging is too cryptic to read. Teammates can start to overthink situations and try too hard to read between the lines. And without the proper context at the leadership level, then it's usually all wrong and can destroy a team's morale. I've seen it happen firsthand, and it's definitely not a nice experience. If everyone can trust the manager's words, then it's much easier to all stay aligned on a common objective and not have people veering off in random directions. So, that's my list of the top traits and characteristics to look for in a manager. Of course, this list could go on and on, as there's just so many things which make a great manager. And again, this is just my list, and I'm sure that people will agree and disagree with some of these points. If you do, leave it in the comment section down below, and I'll be happy to discuss with you. I also do have a list of the top red flags in a manager and what to definitely avoid. Should I make that as a part 2? It's definitely got some spicy and controversial takes, and some people will not be happy. So let me know if you want to see that as well. And there you go. That's all for today's video, and as always, I will see you in the next one.